Yeah, morning guys. Busy down here at the picket line at Euston Station. We can speak now to Mick Lynch, General Secretary of the RMT. Mick, first of all, want to talk to you about these anti-strike laws that the government wants to introduce. How are you feeling about it?
Well, we feel outraged like everyone else. It's been a set piece this week. This government could have got some talks on this week, but instead they wanted to frame their announcement in the context of some railway strikes. So rather than talking to us from December the 15th, they've decided to wait till next Monday so that they could make this announcement. And of course, what this is an attack on human rights and civil liberties. It's most important in a free society that we have free trade unions. And now that they've lost the argument about the issues, about how public services are funded, how public sector workers are treated, they've also lost the argument on the existing anti-trade union laws, because every union is defeating them by having mass ballots. They want to make the action that comes out of those ballots virtually illegal. I don't think it's going to work. I don't think they understand what they're doing. They keep quoting what goes on in France and Spain and all the rest of the world. These laws have never been enforced in those countries, and they're not enacted in the same way that Grant Shapps is trying to bring in. He's shown that he's incompetent. He couldn't run the transport department for 3 years, and now he's trying to run the business department. I think he'll fail again, and I think these laws will be a failure. Working people are not going to put up with an oppression of their rights, and we'll fight back. We'll oppose it in Parliament. We'll oppose it on the streets, and we'll oppose it in the workplace.
To be fair to Grant Shapps, he did say yesterday that he wanted to make it clear that he respects workers' rights to strike, and that he thinks it's part of a healthy democracy, and he wants to make it clear that that right is respected. He just wants to bring in minimum levels of service.
Well, he doesn't respect the right to strike. He wants to make the strikes ineffective. But what he'll actually do...
You don't believe him when he says that?
I don't believe him at all. I don't think he's genuine. I think he just wants to suppress the trade unions, so he doesn't put up with the argument. He wants to make strikes ineffective. What I think he will do is entrench industrial disputes. So you'll have long periods of partial strikes. You'll have long periods of action short of a strike, which is overtime bans and other measures, short-term workouts, withdrawal of goodwill, and all sorts of measures that will just entrench disputes. It won't resolve any dispute. It will just make the action longer and more bitter, if you like. So it won't work. And what he will end up doing is conscripting labour. They're going to make us name people to go to work when we've had lawful ballots. That's a ridiculous situation in a free society, that you can be compelled to break your own union's industrial action mandate, which you may have voted for. So he doesn't respect democracy. We're a democratic society, we're democratic unions, and because he's lost the argument about these disputes, rather than trying to resolve them, he's trying to crush the unions.
Yeah, and you've been seeking legal action on...
Well, we've taken legal advice, and we've got eminent QCs that have told us what they've got in mind may be illegal. It's only court judges that can deal with that. These tend to be old Etonians and Harrovians on one side of the equation. You don't find many friends of the working class in the Supreme Court, so we'll have to see. I think we should defeat it before it comes to fruition. They've got to work out what they're doing. We've got to see what the law actually says in detail. Once it's drafted, we'll fight it in Parliament. We'll fight it in the streets if we can get some mass demonstrations going. And we need the entire trade union movement and all Democrats in this country to stand up against this suppression of human rights.
Yeah, Labour says that the government just needs to get around the negotiating table, doesn't need to legislate on this. And Keir Starmer said yesterday that he would repeal any legislation that they brought in. I assume you liked hearing that from the Labour leader yesterday.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would press Keir Starmer to stand up against this repressive legislation. The government has got a duty in this dispute to resolve it. They are the employer, in effect. They control the train operating companies and they own Network Rail, and it's written into the contracts that they control the industrial mandate. So rather than all this bellicose nonsense, we could have been using this time to talk about resolutions to the dispute. And I'll be talking to the Minister on Monday, and hopefully he'll come to a position where he can really facilitate change in the company's stance so we can get a solution to the dispute. That would be much more constructive rather than trying to take people's rights away in a free society.
Yeah. Last time I spoke to you was Tuesday, I think. Has there been any shift, but you've been speaking to the members since then, has there been any shift in position potentially that may mean there's a breakthrough next week?
Well, we've had mass meetings of our members online following the picket lines all through this week, and there'll be more. Our members are very determined. They told us yesterday that they want to continue. We talked about the style of action we'll be taking, and I informed them about the talks that will be going on next week. So we'll review what we do next week back at our head office when we see what the stance of the government is following on Monday, whether there's a schedule of talks. That will allow us a bit of time, hopefully, before we need to take any more action. We don't want to take action, we want a solution. But the mandate is there. If we can't get any movement and get a resolution, we'll have to resort back to being back on the picket lines.
Yeah, which has now cost, your members over 3 weeks in wages. It's cost the economy billions of pounds. It's cost taxpayers lots of money. What do you say to people like that, especially those in the hospitality industry that have lost a lot of money?
I'd say to them, we're really sorry about that. Billions of pounds have been wasted while the government's been sitting on its hands. These train operating companies are making profit today when the trains aren't running. They're indemnified for their costs. And if I was in the hospitality industry or the entertainment industry, I'd be fuming about the losses, the unnecessary losses that this government is causing while they are subsidising First Group, Go Ahead, Abellio and the national railways of France, Spain, Italy and the Netherlands to not run trains. £450 million will be made by the train operating companies during this period. They made profit all during the pandemic when those hospitality industries lost money because this government is subsidising this industrial dispute. That is an outrage and it's got to be addressed. And if I was the hospitality industry, I'd be knocking on the door of number 10 and demanding a resolution to this dispute.
Thanks for speaking to us, Mick. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Mick Lynch, the General Secretary of the RMT. So this is the second 48-hour walkout this week, today and tomorrow. And then there'll be talks, as Mick said, next week between the RMT, the Rail Delivery Group, and the government.